Here's a story about Jack and the Beanstalk. Many, many years ago, a boy called Jack lived with his mother in a little cottage in the country. They were very poor and often went hungry, but they did have a Guernsey cow they called Bessie. She was a fine brown and white animal that gave more milk than any other cow in the neighborhood. Jack was very proud of her and liked to go to market and sell butter and cheese made from her milk. Well, one day his mother called him. She was looking very sad.
It's no use, Jack. Bessie will have to go. I must pay the rent tomorrow, and we have nothing else left to sell. Take her to the market, and be sure to get as much money as you can for her.
Sadly, Jack tied his rope to Bessie's neck and led her along the winding, dusty road to town. Usually he enjoyed going to town, especially on market day when the square was busy with stalls and there was lots of people around. But today he was miserable, for he liked Bessie, and he was worried about how they would manage without her. As he walked along the road in the sunshine, Jack met an old man who asked him where he was taking the cow.
I'm taking Bessie to market. We have no money, and my mother has told me to sell her.
I'll buy her from you and save you the trouble of going to market.
How much will you give me?
Remembering that his mother had told him to get all the money he could for Bessie.
I'll give you these beans in exchange for the cow.
He opened a small bag and showed Jack the beans. Jack had never seen any beans like these before. There were 5 of them, all different colors, and they shone in the sunlight. But he hesitated. What would his mother say if he came home with the beans instead of money?
These are no ordinary beans. They are magic beans. If you plant them, they will grow to the sky itself.
So Jack took the bag of beans, and with a final pat, handed Bessie to the old man who led her away. Jack ran home.
Mother, look what I've got.
And he showed her the bag of beans. His mother was very angry indeed.
You gave Bessie away for a bag of beans? You stupid boy! Now go to bed. There's no supper for you tonight.
And she wept with despair. Picking up the beans, she threw them out the window.
What shall we do now?
Jack fell asleep feeling very unhappy and very hungry. He woke up early the next morning feeling even more hungry. He hurried into the kitchen to look for some food, and an amazing sight met his eyes. He could see through the window a tall green stalk climbing up and up, as far as the clouds in the sky. Great green leaves sprouted like a ladder from top to bottom. Well, Jack could not wait to see where the stalk went. And without saying goodbye to his mother, he rushed out of the cottage and started to climb. It took him a long time to reach the very top, but it was worth it. He could see for miles, and the sun felt very warm on his head. He stepped off the beanstalk onto the road that lay in front of him. It went on and on, right up to the door of the biggest castle Jack had ever seen. There was no one about, so he thought he would knock on the door to see if someone would give him some breakfast. His long climb had made him even more hungry and thirsty. The great oak door was shut, but Jack plucked up his courage and knocked loudly. At last an old woman opened it a crack, and he asked her if she could spare some food, as he had not eaten for a long time.
Come in. You can help with the chickens in return for a meal, but be careful of my husband. If he sees you, he will eat you up.
She gave Jack some milk and bread, but he had only eaten half of it when he heard a very loud noise. The walls shook and the floor moved under his feet. Jack trembled, and the milk spilled out of his bowl onto the floor.
Quick, it's my husband. You must hide into the oven with you before he sees you.
It was dark inside the oven, but Jack peeked out of a tiny crack. A huge giant had come into the room. The giant looked all around him and shouted,
Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be alive or be dead. I'll grind his bones to make my bread.
Nonsense! You just smell that ox I have roasted for your breakfast. Sit down and eat it while it is hot.
Jack had never seen anyone as big as the giant. He watched as the giant stuck his fork into huge pieces of the ox and wiped it cooked for him, and the fat ran down his chin. Piece by piece, he ate a whole ox, which is more food than Jack and his mother had had in a year, and he washed it down with quarts of ale from a barrel at his side. At last he had had enough, and he called out to his wife.
Wife, bring me my magic hen. I want some more of her golden eggs.
The giant's wife brought in a small brown hen and put her on the table in front of her husband.
Lay!
And to Jack's astonishment, a golden egg fell on the table.
More! More!
And soon, a pile of golden eggs lay on the cloth in front of him. The giant scooped the eggs into his pocket. Then he lay back in his chair and was soon asleep. His snores were so loud that the plates on the shelf shook with the noise. Jack crept out of the oven and, tucking the magic hen under his arm, ran as fast as his legs would carry him down the road to the Beanstalk.
Mother! See what I brought!
And he put the little brown hen on the table in the cottage and told it to lay. Soon there was a pile of golden eggs on the table. Jack's mother could not believe her eyes as the egg shone brightly in the light from the cottage window. She hugged Jack with joy. Now she would be able to pay the rent and buy all the food they needed. They would never be poor again. After a while, Jack grew restless. He wanted another chance to see the giant and climb the magic beanstalk. He slipped out early before his mother could stop him and climbed to the top of the beanstalk. Everything was the same as before, and he lost no time going up to the castle door. The old woman did not remember him, but she thought he would be useful to her and hid him in a cupboard when she heard the giant coming. The walls trembled and the floor shook, and the giant came into the room.
3, 5, 4, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman.
Rubbish! You have such a cold you cannot smell anything. Now do stop all that noise and eat this sheep I've roasted for you.
Now, the only sound that Jack could hear was the giant eating, and piece by piece, a whole sheep disappeared down his great throat. Jack was amazed. When he finished eating, the giant called out to his wife.
Wife, bring me the key to my treasure chest.
The giant's wife brought in an enormous iron key, and the giant opened the huge chest standing by the table. It was piled high with bags full of golden coins. Jack watched as the giant counted the coins out into 2 big sacks. After such a huge meal, the giant found all this counting very tiring, and he began yawning and soon lay back in his chair fast asleep. His great snores sounded like thunder. Jack crept out from his hiding place and, snatching one of the sacks, ran along the road and slid down the beanstalk.
Mother! Mother! Look what I have brought you this time!
His mother scolded him a little, but she was delighted with the coins. She had never seen so many, and they gave up trying to count them all.
No more visits to the giant.
But Jack only laughed. He wanted to go once more to the giant's castle. So next morning, he got up early and climbed to the top of the beanstalk and hurried along the path to the castle. Jack was afraid that the old woman might not let him in again, so he crept in through a window and hid behind a huge milk churn. The wall shook, and the floor trembled, and Jack knew the giant was coming.
3, 5, 4, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread.
The giant's voice echoed around the room, and Jack began to wish that he had listened to his mother and knocked the beanstalk again. The giant looked in the oven, then he looked in the cupboard, but just as he was getting close to Jack's hiding place, the old woman bustled in.
What are you doing? Come and eat your breakfast.
So the giant sat down to his breakfast of 5 roast hens and 10 loaves of bread. When the giant had finished eating, Jack wondered what he would do. After all, he no longer had so much money or his golden egg-laying hen. Jack didn't have long to wait.
Wife, open my box of jewels.
The giant's wife opened the huge box as Jack watched. The giant thrust his hand inside it and took out red rubies that were dark as blood, sapphires as blue as the sky, and diamonds as big as hen's eggs. But the giant soon tired of looking at his jewels, and leaving the box open by his chair, he ordered his wife to bring his harp. This was the most beautiful harp Jack had ever seen, for it was made of pure and shining gold that sparkled and shimmered as the giant gently plucked the strings. The giant told the harp to play him a lullaby. The soft, sweet music flowed into the room, and soon its gentle sounds were replaced by the giant's snores. He was fast asleep. Jack crept out once more from his hiding place and snatched some of the jewels. Then he looked at the harp. It was too beautiful to leave behind, so he picked it up. But as he touched it, the harp began to call out.
Master, master!
The strings twanged and twisted, and woke the giant with their noise. As Jack ran towards the road, he could hear the giant shouting furiously close behind him. The earth shook as Jack ran, and he was sure the giant would catch him. He seemed to be gaining on him, and the beanstalk looked a long way away. Jack ran, and at last came to the beanstalk. He started to climb down as quickly as he could, but it was difficult carrying the jewels and the harp.
Mother! Mother! Come quickly and bring the axe!
By now, the giant had reached the beanstalk, and it shook and swayed with the weight of the giant as he climbed down behind Jack. Jack reached the ground just as his mother came out of the cottage with the axe. With 2 swift blows, Jack cut into the beanstalk, and the giant swayed to and fro above him. A few more sharp blows, and the beanstalk quivered and snapped, throwing the giant to the ground with a mighty crash. The earth opened with his weight. He was swallowed up, never to be seen again. Jack and his mother lived happily ever after. They had plenty of money, and the harp played sweet music whenever they wanted. The beanstalk, which had led to so many adventures, turned into an ordinary tree that cast its shadows by Jack's window. But it never grew up to the sky again.